The monitor beeped in slow, cruel rhythm. I clutched the metal rail shaking and screamed through clenched teeth. No hand reached for mine. No voice answered. Only the sting of rubbing alcohol and the bitter taste of fear. "Will your partner be joining you?" the nurse asked. I turned away. She didn't wait for a reply. My best friend dropped me off, then vanished. My husband, he hadn't replied in hours. Where in the world are you listening from? If your heart just sank, hit subscribe for more truths they tried to bury. Before the hospital lights, before the silence, I believed in calm love. Waverly Hills had quiet streets, front porches with chimes and bookstores that smelled like cedar. That's where Jace first spoke to me, in the back corner of Ridley's books. He picked up a copy of East of Eden, looked at my stack, then smiled. 3 Brontes and a Plath, he said. Careful, that's emotional overload. I laughed. He offered coffee. It rained that night. He gave me his coat. 3 months later, we were living together in a rented townhouse 2 blocks from the Riverwalk. I worked at the county library. He handled media accounts for state campaigns. We didn't have much, but I thought it was enough. I didn't know Jace came from money. He said it didn't matter. He wanted simple. We got married under the oak tree behind his uncle's cabin. No guests, no vows, just fingers laced tight and a promise I thought he meant. Sutton was the first to cry. She brought a bottle of red wine and mismatched candles. "You deserve a dress," she said, "but this works. It's so Isla." She hugged me long and tight. Sutton and I met sophomore year, dorm room neighbors, both obsessed with hot tea and crime podcasts. She always walked like the world belonged to her. But when my dad died, she curled beside me and cried too. She was wild, but she was mine. When I had my first miscarriage, she held my wrists so I wouldn't break them. When I told her about this pregnancy, she screamed louder than I did. Finally, she said, "You'll be a mom, and I'll be the cool aunt." Jace grinned and nodded. He kissed my forehead, then poured her another drink. Sometimes she stayed late, sometimes she stayed over. I locked the door behind me, she'd say, wearing one of Jace's old shirts. He said I could borrow it. She brought me prenatal vitamins, reorganized the nursery, and painted constellations on the wall. I wanted to be grateful, but one night she answered Jace's phone. "Sorry, he's in the shower," she said, without missing a beat. "You want me to tell him something?" My hand tightened on the crib rail. I told myself not to overthink. She handed me the phone. It smelled like her perfume. The baby kicked. I said nothing. Outside wind chimes screamed against the glass. Inside, my silence cracked a little. The first time I noticed the silence, really noticed it, was during breakfast. Jace scrolled his phone with one hand, stabbed at scrambled eggs with the other. He didn't look up. I asked how he slept. He said fine. No smile, no return question, just fine. I glanced at his phone, face down. It always stayed face down now. New office rule he'd said a week earlier, no personal calls. Gotta keep things tight. But the screen lit up twice. Once with a text that started S, and once with a heart emoji. He didn't notice me watching. That afternoon I came home early from a prenatal appointment. Jace wasn't there, but Sutton was. She sat barefoot on the couch, legs curled under her, wearing Jace's college hoodie. My hoodie. I froze in the hallway. She looked up like nothing was wrong. "Oh hey," she smiled. "I stopped by to drop off that tea you liked." It got late, so I stayed. She sipped from our mug. My mug. "It's cold," she added, lifting the hem of the hoodie. "Jace said I could wear this one. You always run warm." I stared at her. The baby shifted inside me like he felt it too. I didn't argue, didn't ask questions. I just went to the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, feeling something tight coil under my ribs. Later, I found my prenatal journal on the coffee table, open, half a page smeared. Sutton's lipstick print was on the rim of the apple juice bottle beside it. I closed the book, put it back in the drawer, and washed the bottle 3 times. Jace didn't come home until after 10. He smelled like peppermint gum and sandalwood cologne. I asked where he'd been. He said just meetings. Long day. Then he disappeared into the guest room. That night I lay awake listening to the heater tick, and a laugh I could still hear from hours earlier. Hers. I made his favorite. Spaghetti with mushrooms and garlic bread, extra crispy, just how he liked it. The house smelled like rosemary and toasted butter. I even lit the cheap candle we'd bought at that craft fair last fall. Smoky pines. He once said it reminded him of our first trip. I wore the red sweater he liked, curled my hair, painted my lips soft pink. I set the table. 2 plates, 2 glasses. The clock blinked 7:42 when the door opened. Jace walked in with shoulders slumped, jacket half off, and a look like I'd made things worse. You didn't have to do all this, he said, eyeing the food. I wanted to, I replied. Just dinner. He sat, didn't kiss my cheek, didn't ask about the appointment I'd gone to that morning. I told him the baby's heartbeat was strong. He nodded, chewed slowly, looked at his phone every few bites. No questions, no smile. I asked, you, okay? He shrugged. Just tired. It's been a lot. What kind of a lot? He didn't answer. After dinner, he rinsed his plate, then vanished upstairs. I stayed at the table, hands flat against the wood, eyes stinging. Sutton texted me 20 minutes later. How's Jace? Still stressed? I stared at the screen. Do you need anything? I didn't reply. Next morning, she showed up with almond croissants. I figured you didn't sleep much. She kissed my cheek, set the bag on the counter, and walked straight into the living room. She folded our laundry without asking, held up one of Jace's undershirts. This one shrank, she said. Too bad. He looked good in this. My mouth opened, then closed again. I walked to the fridge. Empty. Except for oat milk mustard and the tea Sutton kept bringing over. The baby kicked again. A soft thud below my ribs, like he knew I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled, told Sutton thank you, watched her move through my kitchen like she belonged, and I counted the number of drawers she'd opened without asking. The pain started as a dull ache in my back. I thought it was just strain, until it gripped tighter, then again, closer this time. I texted Jace, I think it's time. No reply. I called. It rang twice, then voicemail. I stared at the ceiling, sweat collected under my knees. Then I called Sutton. She picked up fast. Breathe, she said. I'm coming right now. 15 minutes later, she pulled up in sandals, hair wet, wearing that hoodie again. She smelled like citrus soap and lavender. She helped me down the porch steps, muttering something under her breath about Jace. Every bump on the road sent lightning through my spine. I bit the edge of my sleeve to stay quiet. You've got this, she said, but her voice shook. At the hospital, she grabbed my bag, handed me off to a nurse, then said, I'll step out, call him, be right back. She kissed my forehead, then vanished. I never saw her again. 10 minutes passed, then 20. A nurse asked, will your partner be joining you? I didn't answer. I texted Jace again. Please, I'm here. It's happening. No reply, no typing dots. They gave me something for the pain. It barely touched it. I gave birth alone, clutching the railings, screaming into the empty space where he should have been. The baby didn't cry right away. I panicked. Then he wailed, tiny, angry, alive. They laid him on my chest, warm, slick, perfect. I kissed his forehead, tasted salt, mine, maybe his. They wheeled us to recovery, a dim room, beeping monitors, no visitors. Later that night, my phone buzzed. One new email, subject line, filing confirmation, Halden versus Halden. My throat closed. I opened it. This confirms the dissolution of marriage filed July 17th, 8:42 a.m. That was 2 hours after I called him. 2 hours after he ignored me and walked into a law office instead. The baby shifted beside me, soft breath against my arm. I didn't cry, not yet, but something inside me broke clean. Morning light crept through the window, but I didn't move. The baby stirred, curled tighter against my side. I hadn't slept, not really. The monitors beeped in rhythm. My chest ached with every sound. My phone sat on the tray table. No new messages, just that one email. Filed, final, without a conversation. I reached for it again. This time I didn't text Jace. I called Nina. We hadn't spoken in almost a year. Not since she moved to Chapel Hill. She answered on the second ring. Isla, her voice cracked. What happened? I couldn't speak at first. Then I said he filed, while I was in labor. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just said, tell me everything. That night, while my son slept on my chest, Nina emailed 3 forms. One to pause the filing, one to request full documentation, and one to contest the divorce on grounds of abandonment and malicious timing. I signed them all before sunrise. Later that day, I asked the hospital desk if they had footage from yesterday. They said yes. Security held it for 72 hours. I'd need a subpoena to get a copy. But they let me see the timestamp log. Sutton checked in with me and walked out alone 23 minutes later, into a black SUV. License plate matched Jace's car. I felt something sharp cut through the fog in my chest. Then I went online. I searched her name. On her public story, a photo from 2 days before. Captioned, some love isn't loud, it just fits. Her left hand was in the frame. She wore a ring, gold band. Same design Jace and I picked at the cabin gift shop. The one he stopped wearing last month. I stared at that photo. The baby whimpered. I held him tighter. I didn't cry. Instead, I created a new folder on my phone. Leigh Evidence. Then I saved the photo and renamed it. Entry 1. The hospital room buzzed low, not loud, just enough to keep me from drifting. My son slept on my chest, breath warm, tiny fingers gripping the collar of my gown. The air smelled like plastic and distant bleach. My body ached everywhere, not from labor, from staying silent too long. I stared at the ceiling. Its pattern looked like pinpricks, or stars if I squinted. I remembered something. One night, long before the baby, we were watching some crime show. The wife torched her cheating husband's car. Jace laughed. "That's overkill," he said. "Real power is walking away like it doesn't touch you." I'd laughed too, sipped my wine, kissed his knuckles. Back then I believed I'd never need that kind of power. Now his words echoed, not like advice, like a dare. I looked down at my son. He shifted, mouth twitching in his sleep. A sound soft and new escaped his throat. I touched his cheek. Then I whispered, "We're not waiting for sorry." I didn't care what they felt. I didn't need them ruined. I needed them to know I saw everything. And I wasn't walking away. Not quietly, not empty-handed. This time, I'd be the one who writes how it ends. The morning after I got home, Nina called. "You ready?" she asked. "I've never been readier," I said. She gave me a name, Cora Allen, digital compliance, quiet genius, no judgment. I emailed her using a burner account. Subject: need truth. We met at a downtown coffee shop, the kind with creaky chairs and sticky counters. Cora wore a hoodie and noise-canceling headphones. She spoke like every word had weight. iCloud, she said. Text backups, geolocation, private albums. If it exists, he left fingerprints. I handed her Jace's full name, number, and email. She pulled out a second phone, typed fast, eyes flicking. Then she stopped, found it. What? She rotated the screen. Shared album, name, Low Tide. He sent her location tags, from a cabin near Oak Run. I leaned forward. There were over 30 photos. Jace shirtless on a porch. Sutton curled on his lap wearing that hoodie. One photo, her fingers interlocked with his clear view of the ring. My ring. I didn't flinch, just said download everything. She nodded. Want it on a drive? Yes, 2 copies. Later that night, I printed them, each page heavy in my hands. I slid them into a yellow envelope. Added a copy of the hospital log, my medical bill, and the timestamp of when Sutton abandoned me. No note, no return address. I mailed it to his firm's ethics board. Certified. Tracked. They prided themselves on image, family-forward representation. Their website even had stock photos of smiling moms. Let's see how well that held. That same day I walked into the bank. Legally, I was still Mrs. Halden. Nina had confirmed it. So I froze the joint account, left him $40. Enough for gas and a cheap lunch. I changed the locks, blocked both numbers, then set up a camera above the porch just in case. I didn't post anything, no captions, no subtweets. I just uploaded one photo. My son in a blue blanket, no tags, no father listed, just his name, Isla Merrick. Jace's sister liked it in less than 3 minutes. Then silence. Phase 1 was done. I waited 3 days. No call, no knock, no apology. So I wrote an email. Subject line, "You left too soon." No message, just attachments. The hospital timestamp, the footage log, the frozen account screenshot, the birth photo, the legal contest form. I hit send, then turned off notifications. The next morning I called Sylvia, his mother. She answered on the second ring. Isla voice cautious, like she already knew. "I just wanted to let you know I said your grandson's been born." Silence. She choked a little. "Oh my God. Why didn't anyone?" "You'll have to ask your son," I said. "Or Sutton." I hung up. That night, Sutton's name popped up on my screen. A voicemail. I didn't answer. Her voice shook. "Isla, I know I don't deserve to speak to you, but I'm sorry. Things got complicated. Jace said you were pulling away." She trailed off. No tears, just excuses. Then flowers arrived at the hospital. White lilies, card, congratulations. No name, but I knew. I threw them away, swept the petals straight into the bin. 2 days later, Jace called. I let it ring twice, then answered. "Isla," he breathed. I messed up. I was scared. Everything moved too fast. I didn't know how to be a father. I listened. Let him spill. "Can we meet?" he asked. "Just talk." "Sure," I said softly. "Let's talk soon." I recorded the whole thing. Nina would want it. Clean, documented emotional manipulation. I ended the call with a whisper. "Take care of yourself, Jace." He paused. You sound different. I smiled. I am. Click. Next morning, I met Nina in her office. We laid out everything. Screenshots, transaction logs, timeline, the photo album. She flipped through them like chapters. Then she looked at me. Are you ready to go all the way? I nodded. This isn't revenge, I said. It's clarity. That weekend, I got a letter from his firm. He'd been placed on leave pending review. Nina filed our complaint the same day. Custody positioning, she said. Not just about feelings. This is about the child's future. I picked up Callan from my mother's. He cooed in the back seat, chubby legs kicking softly. I glanced at him through the mirror. He didn't know what his father did, but one day he would. And when he asked, I wouldn't tell him with rage. I'd show him what his mother did next. Court was set for 10 a.m. I wore navy, no jewelry, no makeup except mascara. Nina met me on the courthouse steps, clipboard in hand, hair pinned tight, eyes calm. You ready? She asked. Absolutely. Inside the room smelled like paper and air conditioning. The kind of sterile cold that made your skin forget summer existed. Jace walked in 5 minutes late. Same suit from our wedding. It looked tighter now. He didn't look at me. The judge entered. We stood, then sat. Nina opened our side with precision. She laid out the timeline. June 15th, emotional withdrawal. June 27th, physical distancing. July 17th, desertion during active labor. Then she submitted the security footage. The image of Sutton walking out alone filled the screen. Jace didn't move. Then came the financial freeze, the email timestamps, the voicemail Sutton left me. The judge flipped through the packet page after page. Do you dispute any of this? He asked Jace's lawyer. She cleared her throat. Not at this time, Your Honor. That told me everything. When it came to custody, Nina pressed again. The mother has been sole caretaker since birth. The father was absent at delivery and did not visit in the first 48 hours. The judge's voice didn't rise. He didn't frown, just said, primary custody to Miss Merrick. Visitation to be reviewed in 6 months. Jace finally looked at me, his eyes bloodshot, mouth open. But no words came. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered. One recognized him. Mr. Halden, is it true your firm's ethics board is... He walked faster, didn't answer. I passed right by him. He didn't stop me. That night, Nina called. Guess who else got the fallout? Sutton. Gone. Clinic scrubbed her name. Her license review's been reopened. How? Anonymous complaint. Time-stamped screenshot. You do the math. I didn't ask who sent it. Instead, I sat on my porch, tea in hand, monitor blinking beside me. Warm air cicadas humming low. The baby shifted upstairs. I thought I'd feel victorious. Instead, I felt done. Not empty, not bitter, just done. My mom joined me. She said nothing for a while. Then you never yell when you hurt. I don't like noise, but you didn't stay quiet either. I looked at her. She smiled. You put it down. A week later, a box arrived. No name, no return address. Inside a baby blanket. Blue and cream, crocheted. Same pattern I made during the second trimester, but newer. A note, no signature. I'll never forgive myself, but maybe one day he will. I folded the blanket, tucked it into a drawer, didn't use it, didn't throw it away. Some things don't belong in your life, but they don't belong in the trash either. They just exist. Proof that something happened, and that you survived it. 6 months later, autumn came soft to Waverly Hills. The leaves turned copper, the air held the scent of baked apples and early wind. I returned to the library part-time, 3 shifts a week, just enough. On my first day back, a boy, maybe 10, asked me for dinosaur books. Dad doesn't like me reading, he whispered. I showed him 3. His eyes lit up like someone handed him freedom. That night, I rocked Callan by the window. Moonlight touched his face, his lashes deep as waves. He looked like Jace, but not in a way that hurt, in a way that felt like a beginning. Sometimes people ask if I forgave him, or Sutton, if I'd ever take them back. The answer's no, but I've let go of needing an apology, of needing justice to look like pain. Now, I just want peace. For me, for my son, for the part of me that once believed in forever and isn't ashamed she tried. Some nights I still dream I'm in that hospital bed screaming alone. Then I wake up to his little hand on my chest, his breath slow and safe. I don't cry anymore, I just breathe and begin again. Have you ever had to lose everything just to find your voice? Tell me where in the world you're listening from. And if this story reached you, subscribe for more truths that refuse to stay buried.